The Apple Cube reopens, and more coming up on today's episode of the latest in tech news. Hey Gadgeteer, you're just in time for the latest episode of the world's only 3-in-1 show on tech, gadgets, and gaming news. That's right, this is the latest in tech news. My name is Taylor American. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now so that you don't miss out on the latest. We do this every weekday around here, and we would hate to have you miss out on the latest. Speaking of, we'll be taking a look at inside Apple's redesigned Cube store in New York City, followed by the Nintendo Switch Lite review. It kind of has some interesting tidbits in there worth looking at. And finally, we'll be taking a look at Wick Hex has an October release date and a new trailer. And if you're like, what? A video game called Wick Hex? Yeah, I've been covering it whenever news came out about it. It looks like a very interesting, promising game. It's not like, how do I explain it? It's very thoughtful in its approach, but we'll be getting into all of that. So yeah, as I said before, a little bit of a shorter show this entire week. I mean, possibly for the time being, just because I have other things going on. I have a full-time job, I have a family, I have a kid, I have this show, and then I have a side business that I run. Yeah, so lots of things are going on, all at the same time. And it seems to happen all at the same time too. But outside of that, wanted to make sure to get this show out for you. So I'm kind of highlighting the top stories and not necessarily the stories that you are like, well, you didn't cover the latest article. I covered the latest that I feel needs to be covered or hasn't been covered properly / enough. I don't know. It depends. If I happen to see, this is true. Currently, the trend all of this entire week, all I've been hearing about this week and last week is about these all new drool-worthy Apple iPhone version 11 came out, and you can do this and you can do that, and it's cool for this, and it's okay if you don't, it doesn't have the 5G option. You just get it anyways. Or Steam, getting yelled at by some countries saying, well, we need resellability. If a player buys a game off the Steam store, they need to be able to resell it. And I go, I don't know. It's because some stories are just like, I don't know, they're not really worth sharing that much. And then other ones are like, oh, please, like I said, quit kicking the dead horse. It's not going to magically get up and walk. It's dead. Shouldn't have to explain it. Oh, why won't it get up? Well, there you go. I explained it. So I've rambled on far too long. Before we can get into today's show, let's take a look back on today in tech history. Alright, today is September 19th, 2019. On this day in history, in 1982, well, the first smiley or smilicon was created. In a posting made to a Carnegie Mellon bulletin board, Professor Scott Fahlman proposed the first known use of emoticons, or smileys, smileycons, something like that. While the use of emoticons became widespread during the 80s and 90s, their original remained unknown until September 10th, 2002, when the original message was retrieved from a backup tape that displayed, the following. I propose that the following character sequence for joke markers be, the colon, hyphen, / and then the parentheses thing. Read it sideways. Actually, it is probably more economical to mark those things that are not jokes, given current trends. For this, use the frowny face emoticon. So, obviously, in case you're wondering where that all came from and how it all started, that's kind of how it started, except we kind of leave off the dash for the nose. It's mainly just like the colon and parentheses, or however you do it nowadays, the emojis, something like that. Yeah. So with that out of the way, let's head on over to today's feature story. Oh, look at it. Behold the awesome wonder of... Oh, it looks like the same store that I walked into like a couple years ago. Yep. Well, it's redesigned. For those of you wondering, we're looking at Apple's redesigned Cube store in New York City. It was finally reopened after some remodeling, and people are drooling over it. Like I said, this was the one interesting piece that kind of stood out amongst the fray of people drooling or yelling or complaining or talking and still not figuring out how to shut up about the iPhone 11. For crying out loud. It's like beating a dead horse. So I figured I'd cover this instead. So if you guys are interested, the article links to the entire show that we record for this episode. I probably just murdered that. If you want the links to the articles covered in today's show, that's better. Head on over to TechNewsGadget.net. So just in time for the launch of the iPhone 11 and 11 Pro. See, I just had to throw that in there. Thank you, Edgar. Apple is finally reopening the doors to its flagship store on 5th Avenue in New York City. Better known as The Cube, the iconic 77,000 square foot space has been closed for renovation since 2017, but Apple is ready to let customers back in starting this Friday. Before it opens to the public tomorrow, though, some people got a sneak peek. And frankly, it doesn't just feel renovated, it feels like a completely new store, especially underground, where everything is brighter and more spacious than before. Now, the first change you might notice walking down the spiral staircase is that the steps aren't glass anymore as they were since the late Steve Jobs when he brought it to life in 2006. Instead, they're now made out of stainless steel, as are the 43 stair treads that are designed to support the floating glass cylinder, which has always been the main entrance to the store. With stainless steel being such a key feature of Apple products nowadays, kind of not surprising that the company is finding ways to integrate the material into its stores. But the biggest difference is just how much brighter it is inside the actual store. The old one always felt a little dim, but that's no longer the case. That's all thanks to the 18 mirror glass sky lenses and 62 skylights that expand from the Cube's entrance to the ceiling, which let in so much natural light, you kind of forget you're underground. Apple also added a backlit ceiling made from a white 3D fabric that mixes artificial and natural light to match sunlight tones on any given day. This looks kind of interesting here. Got a little bit more looks at it. On outside, the tall, luminous glass of the Cube is now complemented by a newly designed public plaza, pictured here, where people can enjoy views of sites like Central Park and the Plaza Hotel, all while enjoying free Wi-Fi from Apple. And it's kind of iconic. I mean, I only went to New York once, and yes, I had to visit the Cube because why not? And there's still a line of people. Apple says the store's reopening means it will resume its place at the heart of one of the world's most vibrant creative communities, in a space that's had more than 57 million visitors since it first opened. The company didn't say how many visitors it's expecting for the rest of the year, but considering that it's kind of one of the NYC's most photographed locations, well, you'll never see it empty, that's for sure, except maybe the one day a year that it is closed. As for the bed bugs that caused Apple to close the store for 24 hours earlier this year, well, an Apple representative told Engadget the issue hasn't come up in a while. So if you happen to be in New York City and want to check out the new Cube, probably means you can do so with some peace of mind. Apple 5th Avenue is opening Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern, when over 900 employees will be waiting to cheer on customers who are picking up their shiny new iPhone. And oh, speaking of the stairs, here's how it looks like now. Looks nice, doesn't it? Looks tight. So there's the steel spiral staircase. Here's some of the skylights, letting in natural light at the underground store. Feels a lot brighter, looks a lot bigger, a lot better. And then there's the Cube's forum, where Apple hosts sessions on photography, videography, and more. And we got some touch of nature where people can sit and charge their devices. They have ports there for all that. A little Apple Music section. So cool. What do you guys think? Are you if you live in New York, you gonna be taking a look at it, checking it out? I don't know, it'd probably be worth it. I mean, that's kind of one of the cool things that I saw when I went to New York, among a bunch of other stuff that was to be seen there. I don't know, it was just way too busy. All I can say is I'm glad I didn't do any of the driving, period, because I would have guaranteed gotten into some accidents. And I didn't know that Times Square was still popping and locking at like 1, 2 in the morning. There are just people everywhere. It's like the city that never sleeps. Well, I guess I got a rude awakening because I don't come from there. I'm not that much of a city boy. So yeah, if there's anything that you wanted to share in terms of if you think this is cool or not cool, or if you have been to the Cube and what your thoughts are on it, let me know down in the comment section if you're watching via YouTube. And if you're listening via the podcast, let me know on Twitter. We are at TechNewsGadget. Alright, moving on to some gadget news. This, my friends, is the Nintendo Switch Lite. And yes, we're looking at it right now. If you want to see the video of today's show, head on over to youtube.com/TechNewsGadget. So The Verge got their hands on the Nintendo Switch Lite, and here is their review. Ever since it entered the world of video games, a few things about Nintendo have remained consistent. Perhaps the most enduring is that the company knows how to make a great portable gaming experience. From the groundbreaking Game & Watch to the original Game Boy Brick to the strangely enticing dual-screen Nintendo DS, Nintendo has always made hardware that you want to hold in your hands and play with. It's a company that understands gaming on the go. In 2017, it took that idea in a different direction with the Switch, which really blurred the line between a traditional handheld and a home gaming console. It was a tablet you could play wherever you wanted, but also slide into a dock to play games on your television. There's no division between console games and portable games anymore. They were just games. For many people, including the author, this allowed them to play games on their own terms, whenever and wherever they were able. Considering how demanding a hobby this can be, and hobby indeed, it was kind of a freeing notion. Now things have come full circle with the $200 Switch Lite, which hits stores starting on September 20th. It's a smaller and cheaper version of the device that cuts out a core feature, which is, namely, you can't hook up a Switch Lite to your TV. It's exclusively designed for playing in handheld mode. With the original Switch, Nintendo proved that games didn't have to be designed around hardware, and that with the right device, you can enjoy the same game in a variety of different places and situations. With the Switch Lite, the company has proved something very different. It can still build a pretty good handheld device, and it looks like The Verge gave it an 8 here. Brief comments. The good stuff is streamlined, sturdier design, improved battery life, excellent directional pad. The only bad stuff, can't connect to a TV, some games aren't compatible out of the box, and there's no kickstand. Why would you? I mean, you're kind of going to destroy the purpose, and people are going to just find an excuse to break it and get a refund. Anyways, the Game Boy didn't have a kickstand. Heck, we do need that for. Now at its most basic, the Switch Lite is really just a smaller Switch. It has a 5.5-inch touchscreen compared to the original 6.2-inch display, and it's overall much tinier. The Switch Lite clocks in at 3.6 inches high, 8.2 inches long, and 0.55 inches deep. It's extremely light and a minuscule 0.61 pounds. It's a lot easier on your arms if you're going to be walking around or playing for long periods of time. The control layout is largely the same, and it has the same slots for game cards and a micro SD card. And yes, if you're wondering, there's a headphone jack, though if you thought the lack of detachable controllers would mean Bluetooth headphone support, well, you're out of luck. It also runs the exact same, fairly basic operating system as the base Switch, and Nintendo says it has 3 to 7 hours of battery life. Has proved largely true during at least the author's testing with it so far. They tested a lot of different games and generally had to recharge every 4 to 5 hours. So keep in mind, there are obvious things about this Switch Lite that are demonstrably worse than its predecessor. In order to get that smaller size and price point, Nintendo had to cut out key features, most notably the detachable controls, built-in rumble, and the ability to connect to a television set. But, even if that was a feature that you needed, I guess, play with that one. Keep in mind, that's the features you had to cut back on. I mean, me personally, and this is me talking now, if I could have a device that had, the features of the Switch, minus the detachable controls, built-in rumble, and the ability to connect to a television set, I'd probably be okay. I grew up with Game Boy very rarely, but I played it from time to time, so I really don't see the point of saying, well, I can't play on mobile unless it rumbles. I mean, what's the point of having a phone then? The phone won't vibrate. But yeah, and I don't need to detach any controls from it. So here's a couple pictures of that all lined up. Let me just highlight a couple other things here. The controls are also a step up due in large part to the inclusion of a proper directional pad. The original Switch featured directional buttons which were disconnected from each other and made playing classic games, an increasingly, attractive feature of the Switch, somewhat of a pain. but the new D-pad here is responsive and comfortable. They tried it with a range of games including Celeste, Super Mario Maker 2, Super Mario World, and the Mega Man Legacy Collection, and it just felt right. Now keep in mind the author said, "I'm still terrible at Mega Man 2, but at least now it's my fault for missing a jump, not the controls." As you can see here, it's definitely back to how it should be. So, not sure if it's a smaller size that makes the controls more accessible, but actually found that most games they played were more comfortable on the Lite. They're hitting more shots in Fortnite and getting higher scores in Sayonara Wild Hearts than you did on the regular Switch. Might be anecdotal though, but you can definitely say that no games felt worse on a Switch Lite, but plenty felt a lot better, and I think that was the key feature of this article. So if you already own a Switch and love it, the Lite isn't a necessary upgrade unless you're absolutely dying for a proper D-pad. The improvements are welcome, but not drastic enough to warrant getting a whole new device. So keep in mind, the Nintendo Switch is for people who are sitting on a proverbial fence, some who liked the idea of the Nintendo tablet but couldn't stomach the $300 price tag, and who didn't really want to play games on TV anyway. This is kind of the scaled back version, $200, drop $100 off. Couple of the features, and you can still have kind of the same look and feel and everything else, just minus a couple of things, but essentially it's the same thing anyways. So if you're interested, it does drop September 20th, I believe. Let me just double check. Sorry, I'm scrolling here really quickly. My eyes are gonna pop out. Yep, hit stores starting on September 20th for $200. It looks like you can get it from Amazon, Best Buy, and probably a whole bunch of other places. And finally here, John Wick Hex has an October release date and a new trailer. And like I said, head on over to TechNewsGadget.net for the show notes. Yes, this has a video that goes along with it. Oh, I'm even looking at the other article, which is the Batman Arkham and Lego trilogies are free on the Epic Store this week. Why? Why are you wondering? Probably going to cover it more tomorrow because tomorrow's Friday instead of actually the day before. But I'll speak about that more tomorrow. Why are the Batman Arkham series and Lego trilogies free on the Epic Store this week? John Wick Hex is what we're talking about. Is unexpectedly a strategy game. It also seems quite good. In the E3 preview at least, it plays like XCOM via Superhot, in which the sharp-dressed anti-hero is forced to prove repeatedly and aggressively that the best defense is a very good offense. Developer Bithell Games, whose previous releases include Quarantine Circular, Volume, and Thomas Was Alone, announced today that the John Wick film prequel will be out on October 8th. Ahead of that, creator Mike Bithell and an array of special guests will take part in a panel on the making of the game at New York Comic-Con. Names weren't named, but Hex features voice work from Ian McShane, Winston, for those of you who don't know, Lance Reddick, Charon, as well as Troy Baker as the mysterious antagonist Hex. Make of that what you will. So if you are interested, John Wick Hex will be on sale. Well, not for sale, it'll just be released for $20 and be available exclusively on the Epic Games Store. That you can find out more at johnwickhex.com. October 8th is the release date, so if you guys are interested, here's the trailer. Let's see a little bit of it. Come on, play the game. No, I don't want to see that. Get back that screen.
Jonathan will find this place. You must know that. He will not.
And that's all I'm going to show you. So, you thought you were going to watch the whole thing. Well, if you do, head on over to TechNewsGadget.net, like I said, and you'll be able to click on the article link, and from there, watch it in all of its YouTube splendor. And with that, that wraps up this episode of the Latest in Tech News. Thanks for tuning in. New episodes every weekday. Latest in Tech News can be found on every major platform, including Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, Stitcher, Overcast, and more. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to let us know by clicking that like button and by leaving a comment if you're watching via YouTube. And if you're listening via the podcast, we'd be greatly appreciated if you could head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review, or just leave us a review in the app you're currently listening in. Also, double check that you're subscribed so that you don't miss the next episode, and be sure to share this episode with a friend. I'm your host, Taylor Merrick, and remember, for the latest in tech, gadget, and gaming news, visit TechNewsGadget.net. pretty much keep being awesome, guys, and I'll see you on the flip side.